There's a point in every long career where silence stops protecting the truth. Clint Eastwood reached that point late, after a lifetime of letting his work speak and his grudges breathe in the dark. He didn't tweet, he didn't litigate reputations, he remembered. And when the questions finally came, why certain names vanished from his sets, why some collaborations never happened twice, Clint didn't give speeches. He gave a list. Leonardo DiCaprio, method versus gunslinger. The most famous name on Clint Eastwood's list entered his orbit in 2011 with J. Edgar, the dark biographical drama about FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. Leonardo DiCaprio, then 36, was already Hollywood's most bankable leading man. He had just come off the 1-2 punch of Shutter Island and Inception, both global hits that cemented his reputation as a versatile actor who poured himself into layered, emotionally turbulent roles. His reputation as a method performer was well-earned. Months of research, physical transformation, and endless probing into a character's psychology. Clint Eastwood, by contrast, was entering his 80s and known for his legendary efficiency. Since the 1970s, he had earned the nickname One Take Clint. His philosophy was simple. The first take captures freshness, honesty, and instinct. More takes risk overthinking, artifice, and wasted money. That collision of styles played out quietly but unmistakably on the set. Crew members later described the atmosphere as professional but tense. DiCaprio would often want another attempt at a scene, to try a different emotional beat or refine an expression. Clint, leaning back in his chair with a near-whispered, "That's it," would move the production forward before DiCaprio felt finished. No shouting matches, no public meltdowns, just a simmering mismatch of rhythms. One insider later compared it to a racehorse asked to run in cowboy boots. The irony is that both men wanted the same thing, truth. For DiCaprio, truth came from digging deeper, pushing past artifice until every emotional layer was revealed. For Eastwood, truth came from the raw, unvarnished first attempt, before an actor could intellectualize it. These are two schools of filmmaking that rarely blend well. Yet J. Edgar was completed, released in November 2011, and earned mixed but serious reviews. Critics praised DiCaprio's commitment, noting the physical prosthetics and the way he captured Hoover's paranoia and contradictions. The Golden Globes nominated him for Best Actor. Still, the film itself divided audiences, with some finding it too restrained, others appreciating its sober tone. When awards season ended, something telling happened. Eastwood moved on without DiCaprio. He returned to actors who shared his tempo, Tom Hanks in Sully, Bradley Cooper in American Sniper and The Mule. Meanwhile, DiCaprio gravitated back to directors like Martin Scorsese, Quentin Tarantino, and Alejandro Iñárritu, filmmakers who encourage endless exploration. The silence between Clint and Leo wasn't loud or bitter. It was simply final. Looking back, the tragedy lies in what never followed. Two giants, one film, then nothing more. The world never got to see what their chemistry might have produced if they had found a middle ground. For Clint Eastwood, the door quietly clicked shut, as it always does when respect and rhythm fall out of sync. Gene Hackman, the rival he couldn't direct. Before Leonardo DiCaprio tested Clint Eastwood's patience, there was Gene Hackman, one of the most respected actors of his generation, a man whose intensity could electrify or unsettle any set he walked onto. Their collision happened on Unforgiven, the revisionist Western Clint both directed and starred in. Hackman was cast as Little Bill Daggett, the brutal sheriff of Big Whiskey, a man whose sense of order came wrapped in violence and hypocrisy. It was a role that required menace delivered with eerie calm, and Hackman gave one of his finest performances. On screen, the result was seamless. Off-screen, it was a different story. Clint was 62 when he made Unforgiven, already a seasoned director who ran his productions with a famously quiet authority. He hated shouting, hated wasted time, and valued discipline above all else. Hackman, then 62 himself, was at the peak of his power as an actor, fresh off acclaimed performances in films like Mississippi Burning and Narrow Margin. He was brilliant but known for being combative, the kind of actor who could intimidate directors if he felt their direction didn't serve the truth of the character. To Hackman, questioning lines, blocking, or motivation wasn't disrespect. It was his method. To Clint, who expected his rare notes to be executed without debate, Hackman's pushback felt like friction. One story from the set captures the clash. During a key scene, Hackman stopped mid-take, turned to Eastwood and said flatly, "That line doesn't work." "I'm not saying it," Clint, who almost never raises his voice, simply looked at him and replied with quiet finality, "You will." No argument followed. The take went ahead. The message was clear. On a Clint Eastwood set, the director's word is the law. Yet the tension wasn't open warfare. Both men were consummate professionals. Hackman delivered a performance so sharp and terrifying it earned him the 1993 Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. Clint himself won Best Director and Best Picture, with Unforgiven cementing its place as one of the greatest westerns of all time. But when the dust settled, neither man worked with the other again. Over the years, Clint has often reminisced about Unforgiven in interviews, praising Morgan Freeman's steady presence, Richard Harris's haunted dignity, and even Saul Rubinek's sly performance as the writer. Hackman's name, however, rarely came up. Not out of disrespect. Clint has never denied Hackman's brilliance, but more like a file closed and locked away. For Hackman, Unforgiven would be one of his last towering roles before retiring from acting in 2004. The tragedy lies in what might have been. Two giants, both born in 1930, shared one project that reshaped cinema. But the intensity that created greatness also ensured it could never be repeated. Hollywood often rewards noise and spectacle, but in Clint Eastwood's world, silence is the truest verdict. And the silence that followed Unforgiven told its own story. Mutual respect, but no second chances. Spike Lee. A battle over history. Clint Eastwood is not a man who usually answers back. His career has been built on silence, letting the work, not the words, do the talking. But in 2008, for one of the few times in his long career, he broke that silence. The spark came from Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima, Clint's ambitious double project that told the story of Iwo Jima from both the American and Japanese perspectives. Together, the films earned critical acclaim, Oscar nominations, and praise for their grim honesty about the cost of war. Yet not everyone was satisfied. Spike Lee, never one to hold his tongue, publicly challenged Eastwood. In interviews while promoting his own World War II drama Miracle at St. Anna, Lee accused Flags of Our Fathers of ignoring the contributions of Black Marines who had fought and died at Iwo Jima. "Many African Americans gave their lives. You can't ignore that," Lee said pointedly. For him, it wasn't just about one film. It was about Hollywood's long history of writing black soldiers out of the American war story. The omission stung in a country still reckoning with racial inequality, and Lee's comments made headlines. Eastwood, usually stoic, snapped back. In an interview with The Guardian in June 2008, he dismissed Lee's critique with a sharp edge. "Has he ever studied the history? A guy like that should shut his face." For a man as famously controlled as Clint, the bluntness shocked Hollywood. Spike wasted no time firing back, telling reporters, "I'm not going to shut up. Clint sounds like an angry old man." Suddenly, two of the industry's most respected filmmakers, one the stoic cowboy director, the other the outspoken provocateur, were locked in a war of words. The truth is, both men had a point, and that's why the feud hit so hard. Clint saw his mission as telling a specific, historically documented story. The men in the famous photograph of the flag raising on Iwo Jima, none of whom were black. For him, including characters outside that narrative would have felt dishonest. Spike, on the other hand, believed filmmakers have a responsibility to reflect the fuller truth, because excluding black soldiers from war stories, even unintentionally, perpetuates their erasure from history itself. Neither man was willing to bend. In the years since, the silence between them has remained. They've never appeared on the same panel, never traded public praise, never extended an olive branch. Clint's friends say he carried more anger about the accusation than he ever showed, because erasing history was the opposite of what he thought his twin films had done. Spike's allies argue that visibility is itself a form of truth, and leaving people out, even for the sake of narrative focus, causes fresh wounds. The feud calcified into one of those Hollywood rifts that never heals. Not loud, not ongoing, just permanent. Two masters of the craft, both determined to honor memory in their own way, left standing on opposite sides of a gulf no one ever tried to bridge. In Eastwood's world, that means one thing: silence and no second chances. Seth Rogan, The Sniper Tweet. When American Sniper expanded nationwide in January 2015, the response was seismic. Directed by Clint Eastwood and starring Bradley Cooper as Navy SEAL Chris Kyle, the film stormed the box office, eventually grossing over $540 million worldwide, making it the highest-grossing war film of all time and Eastwood's biggest commercial success. But with success came fire. Audiences across America lined up, many hailing it as a moving tribute to military sacrifice, while critics and commentators split sharply. Some praised its restraint, while others accused it of glorifying violence and whitewashing the Iraq War. It wasn't just a movie, it became a cultural flashpoint. In the middle of that storm, Seth Rogan added fuel without meaning to, or perhaps without thinking through the weight of his words. On January 18, 2015, he tweeted, "American Sniper kind of reminds me of the movie that's showing in the third act of Inglourious Bastards, the one where the Nazi sniper is killing allies. The comparison landed like dynamite." He hadn't named Clint, but everyone knew where the comment pointed. By likening Eastwood's portrayal of Chris Kyle to a propaganda film celebrating a Nazi marksman, Rogan hit the most sensitive nerve imaginable: intent. Was American Sniper meant to honor service or to sell ideology? The backlash was immediate. Veterans groups condemned the remark as deeply disrespectful. Social media exploded with anger, accusing Rogan of mocking soldiers' sacrifices. Rogan scrambled to clarify, posting follow-up tweets that he didn't mean to equate American Sniper with Nazi propaganda, only that it reminded him of the way propaganda films work inside stories. But by then, the damage was done. Once words leave the feed, they can't be erased. Clint Eastwood, true to form, said nothing publicly. He didn't defend the film in interviews, didn't fire back at Rogan, didn't allow himself to be pulled into the media circus. But those who know him say the anger was real and personal. Eastwood had built American Sniper not as a political pamphlet, but as a portrait of one man's haunted life, the price of duty on a soldier and his family. To have it reduced to a 140-character comparison to Nazi propaganda felt like mockery, not critique. And in Clint's code, mockery is unforgivable. Industry insiders quietly noted the fallout. Rogan, a bankable comedy star at the time, was never in Eastwood's circle to begin with, but after 2015, the distance became permanent. If his name ever crossed a Warner Brothers casting list near Eastwood's projects, it disappeared quickly. Not a blacklist, not a public feud, just absence. The tragedy is generational. Eastwood came from an era when disputes were hashed out face-to-face, on a set or in a boardroom. Rogan came from an era when a tweet is a conversation, and wit carries more weight than context. They were never going to meet in the middle. In the end, Eastwood did what he always does when the respect is gone. He closed the door, quietly and forever, leaving only silence where a bridge might have been. Michael Moore, The Line in the Ballroom. Roll back to 2005, A room full of tuxedos and soft applause at the National Board of Review. Clint takes the stage and drops a line people still quote. Michael Moore and I actually have a lot in common. We both appreciate documentaries, but if he ever shows up at my front door with a camera, I'll kill him. Nervous laughter, a few sharp intakes of breath. No grin to signal only kidding. With Clint, delivery is the meaning. The room heard the warning. Moore did too. Context matters. A year earlier, Fahrenheit 9/11 had scorched the air. Prize-winning, headline-devouring, a political grenade rolled into the national living room. Clint was at that moment moving through $1 Million Baby and toward Flags of Our Fathers, telling stories about sacrifice and the private cost of public duty. Where Moore saw a truth-to-power broadside, Clint saw exploitation, dressed as revelation, cameras at doorways, confrontation staged for effect, emotion welded to agenda. You don't have to agree with him to understand the reaction. The old soldier's son looked at the methods and said, "Not at my house." They didn't argue on panels. They didn't debate on cable. They drifted to opposite edges of the room and stayed there. You can chart the silence afterward like a weather map. Cold front, no chance of collaboration. The irony is that both men care about America's story, just in incompatible registers. Moore pushes with spectacle to force a reckoning. Clint pares down the frame until the reckoning can't be avoided. Put those two instincts in one cage, and you don't get dialogue, you get a standoff. That's what happened. A single line in a ballroom, and then the long shadow of a grudge that never needed another word. Which of these 5 names surprised you the most? DiCaprio, Hackman, Spike Lee, Seth Rogan, or Michael Moore? Tell us your pick and why in a sentence. If you want more untold Hollywood truths, tap subscribe and turn on notifications. New episodes every week.